What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined Podcast. I am so excited to have Sarah Brazier with us today. Sarah is recognized as a LinkedIn top voice, influential woman in sales, and President's Club winner. She may be best known for her quick, quippy LinkedIn posts on sales, whether it's a day in the life, sales fails, or best practices. She really likes to share tactics that help her win deals in an effort to help the broader sales community. Before starting in sales, Sarah worked for multiple nonprofits as a speaking coach and an actress. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
An actress. We're gonna have to talk about that a little bit. I don't want to mess up Dale's flow.
No, I'm totally interested. What kind of actress did you? What were you doing?
I was doing a lot of stage productions. So
it's kind of like
anything
sales.
Someone would
Stage production,
yeah.
Sales.
It is sales.
I think it's a lot like sales in that people who don't do it for a living often misunderstand exactly what the job entails. So I think there's some of that goes on. They go, oh, you get to be like, pretend to be somebody else on stage. Oh, you get to just like ask people for money and they give it to you and you're kind of annoying. No, it's a little more than that.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
I love it. Do you still do any acting on the side?
I haven't since the pandemic. Basically, when I started working at Gong, I said, I'm going to not act in any shows for a year because I want to make sure that I am very good at my job. And I don't want to have any excuse or reason why I wouldn't excel. So I hit pause and I stayed in the theater community. I produced some shows and did like some readings. So I did like very, like a weekend commitment kind of things, but not like 20 hours of rehearsal a week kind of things. And then the pandemic hit. And then I was like, I don't really want to do Zoom readings. Those are weird.
Yeah.
Zoom
I love it. So, okay, let's get this show started. So it's time to reimagine your role in revenue. So you're an awesome salesperson. You've done amazing stuff in sales. What would be one other position that you would take on in the go-to-market function, whether it be marketing, revenue operations? What would you pick and why?
I would probably do some form of marketing, and I would either pop over into product marketing because that's very interesting. You spend a lot of time with product. You start to understand roadmap. You sort of link the salespeople back to product, and you get to write a lot. And that would be fun. Or I would go into like brand development, content writing. One of my favorite things of like little projects that I've done have been like producing videos or producing shows, and that whole orchestration of like getting everyone to work together around some kind of concept that is creative. And then the creative execution of that is super fun. So like if someone gave me a budget to just go make like funny content for their company brand, I would.
So I love that. And I think that ties into kind of revenue today, what's working, what's not. You work for Gong, right? It's no secret that Gong has probably some of the best branding and content marketing out there. Everyone knows of Gong. And I think that part of that, like, listen, folks like you and other sales folks that, I know and have known at Gong are phenomenal, but the brand plays a big role in that. The product marketing plays a big role in that. Talk to me about how you think that's impacted your sales ability, both positively and negatively. Because I'm sure, like, I'm thinking the positive sides. I'm sure there's other sides that we don't think about and that startup founders aren't thinking about.
So I started out as an SDR, and I wasn't a particularly good SDR until I got to Gong. And then Gong molded me into the likeness of a good SDR. But it took a lot of work and a lot of coaching. So I'm very grateful to people like Tanner Robinson and Adam Ochart and Eric Lindros, because they were very influential and instructed me a lot in all the things I should and shouldn't do. And at the same time, I started posting on LinkedIn, and I had one post that went viral, and it sort of launched me into going, oh, I should keep doing this. So one thing that was really great about having that personal brand, which also became tied to Gong's brand, was that I could source meetings off my content really quickly. I could just like post something just about a day in the life of being an SDR. Inevitably, somebody would say something or a VP of sales would comment on my post. I'd ping them. We'd start a conversation, very casual, sort of like if you went to after hours happy hour for some kind of revenue meetup and you just started talking and eventually you go, oh, actually, we could probably help you with that problem. That's how my approach to social selling was. So I sourced a ton of meetings and that was great. Eventually, then I became an account executive. And I think by that point in time, I had gone, I think I had, 15 or 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I was still sourcing a lot of meetings off of my social media content. But that also created a ton of pressure to like perform at some capacity as a seller that no one should expect someone who is, 3 months into their account executive role to be able to perform. So that was just like massively anxiety inducing because you've created a myth around yourself, whether intentional or not, and people have certain expectations for you to sound exactly like your posts or sell in a really specific way or never drop the ball or have perfect communication, but they expect execution to be absolutely on point. And unfortunately, I am human.
Ah, the human part. It's funny. I would imagine that everything you say, actually, like we've built this perfect brand and have this perfect product and like everything's perfect. Like, why aren't you closing this deal? Like, why didn't this close faster? Like, we're Gong. And not to make this into the Gong show, but like there's other brands that I think suffer from this as well that have done a really good job of building kind of this content engine where it's almost like, what do you mean they decided to not go with us? How do you balance that?
Well, fortunately, we have like very realistic leaders who are also in the trenches selling too. So they recognize like, oh, this is kind of hard. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges for people who join Gong. They think that it's going to be an easy sell because everybody knows what it is. And it's actually kind of hard to sell the product. So, you're working like your fastest sales cycle is 30 days if you're working on the corporate business side and doing like commercial sales, but you're working 3 to 6 months long to some of my sales cycles have been upwards of 9 months. So it's complicated. There are dozens of people that you're talking to. You're getting super multi-threaded, building a business case. It's hard to prove ROI of conversation intelligence or revenue intelligence in the brief pilot period that we have. So you have to get people to buy into the vision and align to expectations. We sell a lot through pilots. So yeah, I think there's definitely like a learning curve that takes place and it becomes challenging. But, fortunately, like our sales leadership is understanding of that. So I think some of those pressures that I put on myself also came from me. Like we always like our self ego, if you observe the ego of the self, even when you think you're being humble, you're still thinking that people think about you a whole lot more than they actually are. And maybe they don't really care or give a crap. Like they're just like, yeah, just keep trying, get the next one.
I want to circle back to something you said earlier that you were an SDR, but you weren't a good SDR until you got into Gong. And it sounded like the enablement side of it, like what was different and why were you a better SDR at Gong than you were in the past and how that evolved? Because I think too many people are thinking you come into a company and you should be producing in 2 weeks and it's just unrealistic. So I'm curious how that process went for you.
Yeah. So I think I can break it down a couple different ways. Like there was challenges with like me as a seller and both like my like skill set as well as like the way that I was mentally framing being an SDR. So there were challenges there in my first role. There were like structural and leadership change management problems that happen with every company, but this company happened to be in the throes of them. And they were scaling too fast and too quickly. And so they had brought on, like from the day that I started to the day that I quit, which was like in a period of 9 months at my first company, they had like tripled the size of the SDR organization, but they had not tripled meetings booked or, when the recruiter asked me like, what was your quota attainment? I was like, well, it's definitely less than 50%, but I can tell you that 48 of the 50 people on this team also have quota attainment of less than 50%. So I don't think I can tell you anything that's going to be meaningful because like Nobody's achieving.
And at least you're being honest. Let me bring you into context, because I think a lot of times we're asking questions like this, like, what's your quota attainment, with zero context. Like, no one's attaining quota. Everyone's at 50% because they just tripled the size of the team.
They tripled the size of the team, and they didn't have good marketing sales alignment, and they didn't really know who they should be selling to within an organization. Like, this company should have been selling to CFOs, but they were accepting, EAs as a qualified buyer persona. And the marketing team was sending out paper flyers saying, if you take a meeting with us, we'll give you a $100 Amazon gift card. No questions asked. It's like,
and the founder, whoever, was saying that this is a fantastic way to book meetings.
6 months of that, like, that, it didn't make sense. And I was sitting there and I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know anything. I'm an actor. I don't know. My degree is in journalism, but does this make sense? Like, I don't,
like,
I know I just
does not equal 3. Hold on.
And I was like, am I stupid?
And it comes back to that mental space, right? You were talking about, like, mentally reframing stuff, and you were like, this doesn't sound right. But then when you got the Gong, like, they like set you up for success and a path.
Yes. Yeah. So Gong had like a really strict qualification criteria. They awarded quality over quantity. So at the time, the way they structured it, and this was like a sales team of 12 SDRs, I think. But it was like a VP of sales or a chief revenue officer, we know, has a higher likelihood to close a deal and shorten sales cycles. If you book that, it's 2 points. If you book a director, it's 1 point. Managers are 0. So there was like a lot of thinking of like, how do we reward behaviors that will actually lead to revenue generation when an SDR's role is not to generate revenue, but it's to generate the potential for revenue.
Because some of those meetings may even work out, right? The director level may work out, but it's not like in the bullseye of the target of the buying persona you're going after.
Exactly. And the director probably, it does work out if you do it right, but it doubles the length of your sales cycle.
Right.
Because you got to get multi-threaded, got to get to power, got to get buy-in. And there's more, the farther you are from power, the more that can go wrong.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like thought process like that. They also really knew, like, who are we trying to sell to? It was super clear. Like, I never once thought, well, who would be responsible for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who cares? And then there was continuous development. So every week we listened to not SDR cold calls, although we did do that, but we listened to account executive calls.
Love that.
Yes.
Discovery calls.
So for every founder listening, when we talk about transitioning from founder-led sales, dialing in on your ICP, dialing in on your buyer persona, constantly learning, developing, listening, iterating, experimenting. This is how you do it, right? And I get it. When you're first starting, you have to be broader, but you still got to really focus on that ICP. And if you're not listening to those calls, and to your point, Sarah, SDR shouldn't be listening to SDR calls, listen to AE calls. You're not going to get better. I want to touch on something that you said, because I think it ties into not just how revenue teams should run today, regardless of the size, but specific to founders transitioning from founder-led sales. And you talked about leaders selling to, leaders being in the trenches and selling as well. Dale and I are both recovering CROs, recovering VPs of sales. I think both of us have said and do say, like, we're not the leaders that are going to sit behind a keyboard and just hit refresh on Salesforce all day. Like, it's part of our business model as well, right? Like, even now, like, we're in the trenches with your team. We're doing the work. But a lot of leaders don't. A lot of leaders are, hey, Sarah, like, I listened to that call. Like, you should say this differently, or you should do that differently, or go try this because it worked for me. And they don't actually get in the trenches. Talk a little bit about like what that is like, not necessarily from a Gong standpoint, but from you as an AE standpoint. Like, what does that mean to you, and how does it impact your?
Yeah, well, I can talk about this from the perspective of one of the larger deals that I closed recently. So we had mutual investors, and that was something that one of my directors spotted. So even before I brought up, hey, we have mutual investors, my director was going in and looking at my book of business and looking at the pipeline that I had and thinking, how can we creatively get in front of the right stakeholders? And was coming to me not with a directive of, Sarah, go do this, but hey, did you know this? We should figure out a way to incorporate this into our strategy. What do you think? Which I think is a really great way to lead. And a lot of, I just don't think a lot of people who are leaders give their people the autonomy to think for themselves. Or they like try to be like too Socratic. And that's also really annoying in my opinion.
I was just talking to a founder yesterday, and this exact point came up. I kind of liken it, and you don't know this, but like it's like kids. Like when you have kids, you kind of have to guide them, but allow them to make their own choices, their own mistakes, their own. And as a parent, you're like, I don't want them to make a mistake because you want to save them. But that doesn't help them in the next iteration of the process. And I feel like it's the same thing because, you know, you understand as a leader, or hopefully you do, of how you would potentially go do it. But that doesn't mean it's the right way. It doesn't mean it's going to be exactly how you would execute on it, because it's your deal. You have to figure it out, and you're going to have to close the business. So I love that. If you can find leaders that do that kind of managing and coaching and helping, like, they're gold.
Yeah. I think a lot about, so I was a teacher for all of 1 year.
Okay.
I would have led with that.
Actress, teacher.
Yeah, I taught drama and I coached speech and debate.
Okay.
So
I have to connect you with my daughter. She just went into USF, so she's just going to college. But president of the drama club, like all this, like I could probably map your journeys together.
Yeah, if there might be, I think they have a speech and debate team over there. I know all about speech and debate. If you ever want to talk speech and debate, I could do like multiple podcasts all about the world of speech and debate. Forensics. That's like the first 10, like if you want to sum up my career in the first like 10 years, it was really doing anything forensics related and then acting in addition to that. But so I've had a couple experiences. My sister-in-law homeschooled, my mom homeschooled, so therefore lots of conversations around like how children learn. And then when I was teaching middle school, I didn't know what I was doing, but my colleagues did. So one of my coworkers, he was getting his master's degree in middle school learning. And literally, how does that brain learn? Because
tell me, I have a 12-year-old. How do middle school brains work, Sarah?
Well, the most rebellious and anti-authority you'll ever be is middle school. So if you just recognize that as a parent, you're like, okay, it's not me, it's them. And that is when the herd mentality disappears from the child. So literally you'll notice this when you teach elementary school. I had 6th graders and like I'd walk in and they'd all answer me as one chorus and they'd all move as one. And it was sort of like this big, like, organism.
Good morning, Mrs. Brazier.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And they all and so you kind of figure out who led the tone and tempo. But if you were alpha, you just sort of control the space. Middle school is like, we don't like you. And that's when people separate into packs and, they're very conscientious of what their peers think.
These are just like sales teams.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. It's 100% like sales teams. And so what I think of is, when you are teaching elementary school, your frontal lobe development and critical thinking isn't there. So the Socratic method of, well, why would someone do that? Well, what do you think about that? That does not work. That's if you want to alienate your child who's in 3rd grade from learning math, do that. And I literally did that to my niece and she cried. And I was like, oh, okay, don't do that. But then so then with high schoolers, it's very much like, well, why would someone do that? Well, what does that mean? Well, that's when you're learning, geometry where you're doing a lot of proofs, if then. So there's a lot of that happens with, I think, how adults learn and adults function. We're all just a bunch of middle schoolers trying to get along and thinking about, do I look cute? And am I in the in crowd or the out crowd? That still happens. So I think like when you're sitting down and you're thinking about teaching a first quarter rep, they are learning so much, not just about how to sell, but about the product, about processes. And there's a lot more handholding that should take place. And there's a lot of theory that you should be explaining. So I think that if a rep comes to you and you tell them go do this, then you also have to explain why. I think you should do this because I think that VP of sales will feel this way. And how do you think they would react? And let's role play it, or let's just think through it, which is what you do in acting. You look at a scenario and a situation and why is someone saying what they're saying and why is that person responding? It's like chemistry. It's just a bunch of chain reactions. And what can we introduce to either make this more acidic or more base? And what's the, end goal of what we're trying to create?
It's the guidance part of it. It's the coaching part of it. Like one of the things you were just saying is when they're like a cohort. So let's say you bring in a new cohort of SDR, the sales reps, you got to kind of teach them from the bottom and not everything that you got to kind of have to guide them and get them through that process. I'm curious, when people are getting trained or sales reps are getting trained, do you train them more on the feature functionality or the objections and the value proposition?
Neither. Let's start with the problem. Like, what are we trying to do? What's the job to be done? And I think if you start from that framework of what is someone trying to accomplish, then inevitably we will discover what the objections are. We will understand what the problems are. If you're trying to double the size of your sales team, what are the problems that then occur? And why would you even double the size of your sales team? You're doubling the size of the sales team because you either have too many leads coming in and you're not able to handle something. You're trying to reach revenue goal. You can't do it with the current output. Something is happening, So let's back up of what's the job to be done? What are the problems that happen when we do that job? What's the best way to solve it? And that's where, and when you come to the part where you say, well, what's the best way to solve the problem? That's when you start learning feature functionality. And then you can actually demonstrate it. So I always talk to when I'm mentoring someone at Gong, I'm like, you're not done with discovery until you can figure out how to solve their problem in the product. And once you know how to solve their problem in the product, that's when you can demo. And then you can demo the solution.
Something you spoke about that I think is so important to sales today and how people, whether you be a founder or an AE or an SDR, no matter what your role is, to how you have to reimagine what you're doing. And that was using your personal brand to book meetings. There's a lot of companies out there that are finally, in my opinion, starting to learn this and encouraging people to use their personal brand. But there's a lot of companies that don't. I turned down a role with a company that said to me, if we hire you, you need to brand your LinkedIn with us, and 75% of your content needs to be about us. And hard pass, right? Hard stop. But I don't think everyone is fully embraced from a rep perspective. How do you do this? How do you use your brand to ultimately further your revenue goals within your company, but at the same time, not have every post be about Gong or be about Revenue Reimagined or be about wherever it is you happen to work?
Yeah. Well, number one, I think you have to decide if you actually want to have a personal brand and you want to exist on the internet that way, because that's the first thing. And if the answer is no, that's okay. You don't have to, because it can be burdensome.
Sure.
And a lot of times I think people accidentally end up oversharing and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I put that on the internet. Example, sometimes I go look at my Facebook. I posted that when I was 15. Oh my God, what am I doing? Let's hit delete. Fortunately, my Facebook's private. My LinkedIn's not. The second thing is your company doesn't own your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is
Say
your
it
living
again.
resume. Your company doesn't own your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn's your living resume. And so you can post whatever you want. And you should also, that doesn't mean that is not without consequence. If I post something really nasty, if I post something that I can think of so many nasty things, but I don't want to utter them into existence. But you can post lots of nasty stuff and you might lose your job. And that's what's going to happen. And you could also post really great stuff and it has nothing to do with your company or what you sell. And that's okay. It could get you a new opportunity somewhere else. I've gotten lots of side jobs from posting content about sales. And I've gotten lots of job offers that are not specific to selling to sales leaders. I could go sell to DevOps or whatever. So
Sorry, love my
Adam
DevOps
doesn't like
people, but like, I don't think there's any better persona to sell to than sales leaders.
I love that. They're the most understanding, but they also have a high bar. Kind of depends on who you run into, who the person is.
100%. 100%. So we at Revenue Reimagined believe in giving more than we're receiving, and you've been so gracious to offer something up to the community or to the audience. Go ahead, tell them what you have to offer.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes with me. We can hang out. I can coach you if you want. We can talk about your cold emails or cold calls. We can even listen to them together. We can talk about career progression. It's whatever you want. It's 30 minutes to hang out.
And it goes by so fast. Like we're almost at 30 minutes. And like, I feel like we could keep going for another 90 minutes. I got so much that I want to keep asking. 30 minutes with Sarah. Like don't sleep on this. You want to sign up for the newsletter. You want this 30 minutes. It's going to benefit you.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, or it doesn't, and you do a mean LinkedIn post about it.
You could get that. You could get acting lessons.
Ooh. Oh yeah, I totally. Yeah, if you've got a kid who's doing speech and debate, dude, I'll cut their piece. I'll coach them up. I've coached this, like, it's totally a non-humble brag, but I've coached multiple national finalists and state champions.
That's awesome.
Wow. I'm going to have to connect my daughter with you. Like, we're going to have a conversation.
So this is why if we were to pull your Gong stats, you probably rank in the top in objection handling, because it's debate, right? Like it all comes together to sales.
Well, that's the part where it's like, I never did the debate. I just did the speech side. And that's why we could spend hours, but
I love it.
Objection handling, I could always practice.
All of us. all of us. And I think that's the humble brag, right? Like I speak to salespeople, Dale speaks to salespeople, sales leaders all the time. I was speaking with the founder this morning. There's no objection that I'm not prepared to handle. I can handle them all. Dude, like I've been in sales for 25 years and I can't handle them all. You're a technical founder. Respectfully, I promise you can't handle them all. Recognizing that you can always get better and that there's always a need to learn, and having that desire to constantly learn. That's what separates the good from the great. So I'm glad that you recognize that. As we wrap up, you ready if we throw some rapid fires at you?
Yeah.
All right, let's rock and roll.
Well, we'll see how rapidly I respond.
Not be rapid, but that's all right. What song would best describe your revenue strategy?
Rhapsody in Blue.
All right.
And can you play it on the piano behind you, the keyboard?
I can play it on the mouth trumpet. The piano behind me, I can be like, Mary had a little lamb on a good day.
Awesome. If you had a crystal ball, what's one revenue trend or strategy that's happening right now that's going to take center stage in the next 12 to 18 months?
Oh, it's going to be like the combination of intent data with sequencing with AI to actually prompt you and move you forward through your prospecting efforts. If someone can do that, I've heard of companies that are like thinking about this is the thing that they're going to sell. If they did, it would truly be a real disruption to the outreaches and the sales lofts, and I would use it.
I love it.
They would use it and promote you.
I love it. All right. So you're a revenue leader and you can only decide one of these two that you're going to focus on. Are you focusing on customer retention or are you focusing on customer acquisition? And why?
That's like a big, it depends.
Tell me more.
Am I selling multi-product? Like if I'm selling a multi-product and I'm selling in a downturn economy, then customer retention is paramount because I could increase my ARR from my customer base massively by just selling them more stuff. Like if I work at Google or I work at Microsoft, I can just keep selling them more Google, more Microsoft. If I am selling a point solution, then it's even in a downturn economy, I still have to have a big focus on net new business because I don't want to lose my customers, but inevitably some of them will churn because they'll fold. They will lose, there's going to be a natural attrition. And then, I can't increase my my ARR as a business if I am. So that's my answer. Did I do that right?
So there is no right and wrong. I will tell you that the answers I personally get the most value out of and the ones I respect the most are the ones that start with "it depends." When someone comes out right away with it's acquisition, I mean, you don't know the whole story. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. It depends is the right answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So earlier in the show, you said you were going to be marketing and specifically product marketing. So you wake up, you grab your coffee the next morning. What's the first thing you do as a product marketer?
I probably go into either my CRM or whatever, and I look at attach rates of additional products that we're selling that I'm attached to as a product marketer on the product marketer for Engage. Do we have enough attach rates? Yes, no, why? I go listen to some Gong calls with some recent conversations around it that have not progressed in the funnel and try to figure out why. And then I go, okay, what's the problem here? Is it a lack of content or education for AEs? Do they not know how to handle objections? Do I then partner with enablement and sales leadership to do some education around our product? Is it that our product sucks and no one wants to buy it? And do I report that back to our product team? And then I think about like, what do I need to be building then from those those data points to support the revenue function? Did I do that right? I don't know. I'm not a product marketer.
I love it. No, I love it. No. Once again, no right answer. Just it's a way to reimagine the revenue, like thinking about it in a bit of a different way, because we all get stuck in our little paths, and what are other people doing and how they're doing it is a good way to think of things.
I love it. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing your insights, for offering up your time. Shameless plug time. Where could people find you? How do they follow you? How do they, dare I say, get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I have on public. There's an Instagram, but I haven't posted it on like 4 years. So I don't actually have it on my phone. So just LinkedIn's the way. If you want to contact me, you can totally contact me there. It's my birthday today. So right now I just have like 500 happy birthdays in my inbox that I need to get through. There's a strong possibility if you message me today, I don't know. And thanks.
Happy birthday. That's awesome. Now here's the funny thing. This is going to air in a few weeks and people are going to think it's your birthday. So you're going to get a lot more happy birthdays. So double the presents, double the fun.
Oh no. It's not, it was my birthday a couple weeks ago.
I love it. Sarah, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was awesome to catch up with you.